Good evening, everybody. Welcome to week 13 of Dynasty Takeaways. I am one half of the host team, Brandon at DBGSC. I'm with Scott. Scott, we could not connect last week. You had prior commitments. I had prior commitments. It was a rough week for us last week, but it's good to be back on the mic with you on a Monday night. How you doing this evening?
I am doing great. And for those that did not get Dynasty Takeaways last week, we apologize, but there was plenty, and I mean plenty of content in the Discord this last week. So if you're not in the Discord, description in the link or link in the description, whatever way you want to put it. You can also join through the Patreon or the website. But Brandon, I think, did 3 separate shows last week, a couple betting shows. You did the Dynasty Takeaways later on in the evening on Monday. So there was a Dynasty Takeaways. It was just mostly for the patrons last week. And then just tons of great conversations, especially given it's Thanksgiving week. I think more people had time to kind of just hang out. You know what I mean? Time with family, downtime, whatever. But yeah, jump in there if you're not already in there. We literally had, you know how many conversations we've had in there, Brandon, where I'm like, I should have recorded this. I know you weren't in there this afternoon, but I went on like an hour and a half diatribe on different roster constructions and builds, just how to exploit what's going on right now. And then when it's done, I'm like, dude, I should have just recorded it. We should have just recorded it because it's literally just me talking to myself and there's, 20 people in there listening. I should have just recorded it and just thrown it up on the pod feed. You know what I mean? Like what better sells the community than that? But yeah, that's what you get numerous times a week where we're just in there jiving. So what's good, man?
Yeah, no, it's always fun. I mean, the Discord is really fun. These conversations are really fun. But really, what I want to talk about tonight, because it's week 13, we're about to have fantasy playoffs. Like before you know it, we're going to blink and the fantasy playoffs are already going to be done. We're going to be pivoting from what we're doing right now, point scoring season, into transition to, non-point scoring season and pick acquisition mode and rookie discourse for about 3 or 4 months, right? So make sure you tap in with Ray and everything that we'll have going on that way. But I wanted to talk to you about variance because I think this is one of those things, and I hinted at it on the All Gas Trade Show on Saturday with Ty. If you haven't seen that one, check that one out. I was on it. But I talked about in one of the trades about injury variance, Scott, and it's just, sometimes, especially as you get closer to the end of the season, there's just sometimes when a team just doesn't click, right? You might have had, at some point during the season, you started with Amon-Ra, Neighbors, Joe Burrow, Jaden Daniels. You came into the season thinking this team is just going to flex on everybody and it's going to completely dominate. And I've built the perfect roster. And now here you are, week 13. You just got Joe Burrow back. Jaden Daniels has been out for majority of the fantasy regular season. Malik Neighbors is on the IR since week 4. And now Amon-Ra's out for 1, possibly 2 weeks. We're not really sure. It says 1 to 2 weeks. They're Detroit's in a must-win situation on Thursday night against Dallas. So to just talk about like when sometimes variance hits your team to a point where it's just like there's nothing really you could do about it, and you just kind of have to accept it. And instead of continuing to mortgage, leveraging 27 picks, or leveraging 28 picks to try and fill gaps, like when do you kind of just say, okay, this is it. There's nothing else I can really do. I just got to accept it and move on to the next season.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some principles that can be learned from this because it's the same thing every year. We get in the grind of the season and you're starting to have to chase injuries. You're having to chase players that were not what you thought they were going to be. It can go both ways too. There's times where you get caught chasing things that are the shiny toy today and you feel like you're going to miss out if you don't buy it 70% of what it could be in a month if it continues. That's kind of like the George Pickens, right? Like people that were not on Pickens for the last 3 years, they might be like, man, I'm willing to pay a first and a little bit more now to get George Pickens. Now, I could also tell you where you could look up in 6 months and Pickens is in a contract dispute with Dallas and nobody would pay a first. You know what I mean? So like there is variance that happens over short-term and long-term portions of the dynasty season. I think it's important that when you are trying to patchwork together stuff, when you're trying to get bailed out, I've talked about it a lot of times with the bailout trade, right? You lose a guy from like Amon-Ra. Let's just say he's probably going to miss the next game. He's definitely not playing this Thursday, I would say. I think that's almost 100%, right? Because it's a short week.
Yeah,
Not a
I would
short week for
expect him.
him, but he's going to miss week 13, which was a great matchup. This is one of the ones where you're hoping this is the last week before we get to the fantasy playoffs. You're not going to have him, right? So if you were banking on you need to win this week and he's your best player, you're probably in trouble. But aside from those circumstances, when you lose a player like that, I'm not talking about a season ender. I'm not talking about the quarterback's out for 3 months like Burrow was. I'm not talking about Malik Neighbors where he's done for the year. I'm talking about a minor injury, an injury a player should come back from. Sometimes they come back early. Like I think a lot of teams with Burrow don't even have Burrow anymore because they were like, he's not going to help me. And you know who he might help you more than down the stretch? Lamar Jackson. But you would have traded Burrow plus for Lamar Jackson in week 3. And then in week 14, you're like, I kind of would rather have Burrow. You know what I mean? Like sometimes things happen out of nowhere. But I think you have to have some principles, Brandon, when variance starts to go against you. Right? You don't pay the tax every time you want to fix something. You don't go, oh, I lost Amon-Ra. I want to pivot to another receiver, but I'm just going to pay 2 seconds on top because I need it for the next week or two. I think if you find creative ways to work that tax in where it doesn't really impact what you can do later, do you really lose anything? Do you really lose anything if you trade a wide receiver 2 for a wide receiver 2? Just maybe it's not as sexy, or maybe it's not as young, or maybe people don't like them in the market that much or as much. But you applied some real basic principles when you're making those moves, and you don't always pay the hefty tax. I think if you do that, you don't find yourself in week 14 without any ability to get bailed out on Amon-Ra. I have a team where I got offered Emeka Egbuka for Amon-Ra in a second. And that is like right now. And it's a team where I'm probably going to make the playoffs, but there's probably about a 20% chance that I could get knocked out if the wrong thing happens in week 14. But I'm looking at it like, is that a deal I want to take? You know what I mean? I have to weigh what are my odds of making it if Amon-Ra is down for 2 weeks versus I really want to pay that second tax right now. I can, but that's the type of offer I'm getting. I'm not getting a, hey, I'll do it straight up because I know Amon-Ra has a little more value or a little more production. So the tax is there. So I think you just have to apply some principles when variance starts to goes against you. I'm looking at some receiver data right now. I'll kick it back to you because I got to crunch this real quick, but it's some interesting takeaways at receiver especially. But that's my take, is just don't get taxed too much when you have to fix something. Apply some real basic principles, but also give yourself a cushion. One thing that's going to be part of the roster construction series this year, Brandon, is how much cushion do I actually need to get through a season? I'm working on trying to find out what some of those numbers are when you're talking about certain formats. How can you calculate it for your league? What do you really need to get through the attrition of an entire season? How many players do you really need? How many picks do you actually need? If you're just talking about like whatever the average attrition rate would be for injuries or bad performances, etc. Now, you can have a team that gets killed. You can have a team that gets really lucky. But just in general, don't you think we don't do a good job of building that buffer into our rosters? We look at our teams week 1, dude, this is a stack team. Oh, but I already traded my first. I already traded my second, which a second, the hit rate on the late second is so low. Well, you know what the hit rate on is a late second when I can trade it in week 9 when I need something? Very high, because I'm getting something that I need with it. But if you already traded it away, you leave yourself without the cushion that you really should have. So that's my take.
Yeah, I was just about to say too, like, you know, I think I'm going to be like, if there's a takeaway going into the 27 season for me, especially like with teams that I'm competing on, is being a little bit more diligent with pick trading, right? Especially my own. Like it's very tempting, especially in some of the leagues we play where, you know, you only get 1 year's worth of picks, right? Where you have your first and second, you know, Super Bowl comes, MFL loads those 27 picks, and it's like Christmas all over again. It's like, oh, look, I got 3 more picks to burn, or 4 more picks, depending on what your league is. And now it's all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, what cheap veteran can I go find? What cheap guys can I go buy off of dudes? Because some guys just don't want to hang on to that Derrick Henry in the offseason, or don't want to hang on to that Devontae Adams in the offseason. And while, yeah, sometimes it is good to get some of those dudes, like what I don't want to go do is spend my 27 first on a guy. I'm trying to think of like who would be worth like a 27 first straight up, Scott. That it's a little bit older, but like the consistent production's probably not there, right? But somebody's going to offer you a 27 first because they want to just They just want to, try to liquidate as much as they possibly can. Like those are the kinds of trades that I don't want to make in late February, early March before we even get to the NFL draft, because there's so many different things that happen, right? You have free agency, you have the draft, you have training camp, you have preseason. Like there's so many different layers that there's 6 months of inactivity where there's no points being scored, and I've already burnt my picks. And now I'm sitting here September week 1, and all of a sudden you're in the situation you just talked about. I have no picks. I have relatively no flexibility. And the only thing that I can do to get that flexibility is to move off of the pieces that I tried to build the team with to begin with. So did I really actually do something to help my team, or did I just create did I create my team to be like stuck on a straight and narrow path, right? Like I just see like somebody probably traded a straight first over the summer for Rome Odunze. How do you feel about that right now? How do you feel about Rome Odunze right now going into, these last 4 or 5 weeks where he's done like literally like nothing,
I think that as the time gets closer to the end of the year, that list becomes very opportunistic, right? Meaning we already know when you get to the offseason, people are going to guard those picks, even some 26 picks, because they're flexible. They're much more flexible than a random wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 or running back 2 or whatever it might be. But I think as the season comes to a close, obviously the extrinsic value side is on the pick side. So I think to get Rome Odunze, to get many players that neither of us would really ever buy for a first, to get them off somebody else's roster, it's going to cost you a first. But to say I'm just going to go pay a first for those guys is probably not a smart move, because you're giving away the flexible asset. You're also given a short period of time, and I think I have this data that I wanted to share that just highlights how bad of an idea it is to pay a first for a receiver like that, unless you're really convicted long-term. And when I say long-term, I don't even mean like 3 years down the road. You know what long-term for me on Rome Odunze is? The next 12 months. Do I have an asset vehicle that is increasing in value, increasing in demand, increasing in flexibility in terms of what I can do with it? If you tell me, no, but he'll probably be a good receiver, that's not what I want to pay a first for. Because I want to do a little bit more with that. So I think with that, it comes down to like, even if I'm paying a first for something at this juncture of the season, with the variance conversation that we have, is it even guaranteed to work? How bad do you feel if you buy a player for a first and they just don't quite perform how you wanted, and they just perform a little bit like replacement level, maybe a little bit higher? But how bad does that feel when you buy a guy like Rome for a first and you go, well, I probably could have just bought Jacoby Myers for a second and got the same thing? That's where not having the second, not having the third, not having 2/3, not having just picks laying around, even young players, if you don't have picks, now's not a bad time to have a young receiver that's starting to get a little more work. You never know when that could be the piece that helps get a deal done. Even if it's not just a third, it could be a third and one of those guys. And I would say I've learned in the past, Brandon, when I'm already trading away my second in March because I really want something, or I'm trading my second to get into a rookie draft because I really think this is going to be a great steal of a pick, more often than not, I regret that. Because there was that time in week 10 and I go to make a trade and I go to send Brandon an offer. Dude, Scott doesn't have a second or a third. And now guess what I have to do? Be a lot more creative with how I get what I need. And I have to have somebody on the other side that's willing to play ball in my creative vision. If all they're looking for, and I'm on the other side in many leagues too. That roster dash tool that I have, dude, all I do is fish for picks. I don't want your players. All I want is picks. Every week I send out deals. All I want is seconds. All I want is thirds. I don't care if you're offering me players. All I want is the liquidity. So I'm on the other side going like, I'm sorry, I know you really want to buy this running back for me, Brandon, but like you don't have a third or a second. So unless you're willing to pay me something in a higher tier, which you're probably not wanting to do if you're in week 10 trying to buy points, you're just not able to buy from me. So anyway, here's some receiver data that makes it interesting. Throw up the comment before I do this. That's fine.
Yeah, because this is, it feels like we get to this at the end. And we just had this conversation on Saturday night, right? We just went over at the end of the community chat that we have inside the Patreon. We have it every Saturday night. Like We literally went through a list of guys that it's like, when all else fails, these are the dudes that are like stone cold value keepers. And the list was pretty tight. Like there was what? 6 guys? Maybe? What was it? It was Josh Allen. It was Bijan. It was Gibbs. It was Jamar Chase. It was JSN. I don't think there was.
And that doesn't
was
always match the dynasty value either. Sometimes, I mean, most of the time, if a player is so good that you just can't live without them for the current season, then they're probably valued super, super high at the same time. But sometimes that doesn't always cross over. It doesn't always cross over to where sometimes there is a place where it's like, wow, this guy is smashing, but the market still doesn't view them as like a top 5 or top 10 dynasty piece. But here's the data that I have that just shows you we only have 1 week until the fantasy playoffs. For a lot of people, the trade deadline in their league is coming up or has already happened. So you're just talking about making any moves for the next 4 weeks. Obviously, if you don't have a deadline, you can still play it week to week. That's how you and I prefer to play. Week 16, if I need something, I like to be able to go buy it. Not everybody likes that. There's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of people that are against that. But if you have to trade and you have to make your final moves now, this week, you're playing for the 4 weeks of variance, right? And you have to make every move in the next 3-4 days. So here, I'm just using 15 points per game or 15-point games at receiver this year. Okay, so we're through 13 weeks minus the Monday night game tonight. How many games this year by receivers have had 15 or more PPR points?
Like total games.
Total games. Total times this year, receivers have hit 15 or more points in a game. Chat can throw it in there. I'll give it 15 seconds. I know people do not like when I just quiz Brandon on here. We get flamed in the comments for doing that. But how many games this year has a receiver scored 15 or more points across every single NFL game?
So week 13, we probably had like at least.
There's been, I think, 197 NFL games played.
Yeah, I was going to say like 175, 180 games. Let's just go with, there's probably at least 155.
So there's been 197 NFL games played, I believe, during the season or this season thus far. There has been 257 games where a receiver has hit 15 or more PPR points. So you're talking an average of about 1.3-ish per game. Makes sense, right? If you watch a game, you expect at least one receiver, and this is just receivers. This isn't tight ends. This isn't running backs. You expect one receiver will get to 15 points. Now, out of those 257, here's where it gets wild, Brandon. How many different receivers have done that? Different players. 257 have hit 15 points or more in a game this year, but how many different guys have done it?
I'm going to go with like 23 because it really does. Because like Puka gets it like almost every week, right? Like Jamar Chase, when he plays, he's probably.
I'm going to stop you right there. How many different players have hit at least 15 points in a single game, Brandon? One time.
One time.
It's way more than 23.
Okay.
One time. So like for every Trey Tucker.
Yeah.
And for every Isaiah Hodgins, they count.
Okay. Yeah. So there are a little more runoff. Okay. Let's go a little higher. Let's go like 48.
Way more. 108 different receivers have done it this year.
Wow. Okay.
108 different receivers. That is an average of like 3.5 different guys per team. And think about when we think of receivers in Dynasty, we don't go 3.5 deep per team, right? Hell, the Trinity would tell you, dude, you don't even want to go more than like 1 deep on some teams.
No, but I'm like thinking of my own Giants. Like Neighbors had one week. Wandale had at least multiple.
And you know what? Neighbors getting injured has probably allowed 3 other guys to do it because he's not there. So there are injuries. It's not a 1-for-1, but 108 different receivers have had at least 15 points or more in a game. Now, there are kick returners on there. There are literally like a guy that has a 98-yard touchdown. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely flukes. So not all of these guys are fantasy relevant, but a lot of them are for pockets of time. But here's where it gets very interesting. Only 51 have done it twice. So right there, you're eliminating half of them or more as like, I don't want to say flukes, but they've just had one game.
There's a model of consistency.
One time.
Not even.
So you've had 108 different receivers do it, but only 51 have done it twice. Only 34 have done it 3 times. And then only 6 players have done it at least 6 times. So that gap between the difference of even having 3 15-point games to 1 15-point game, you're talking about only 25% of the players that do it once do it again. So if that isn't variance, and when you start applying the value of capturing, like the Trey Tucker game, right? The Tyrell Shavers game where he had 19 points. He may not even play another game. You know what I mean? If you somehow capture one of those games where you get that player for very little or nothing, think about how much value that has in your lineup. Like that's variance. So that's kind of the nature of the game, is trying to capture as much of its variance. And the reason that we pay so much for some of the guys that are more consistent in doing it is because we think we have a much better ability of projecting when it's going to happen. But the reality is, I think we way overshoot what that projection is. Like we know going into a given week, generally who the top, 50 to 60 names are at wide receiver, right? We know who's healthy. We know who's playing who. We know what each situation is as we go into the week. But within that group of 50 to 60, there's a lot of variance that exists in there. Outside of the guys where you go, well, that guy has a 7.9 Trinity. Okay, that guy's probably pretty good. But everybody else, there's so much variance at that position. I think that's one of the new edges, is being able to see through a lot of the bullshit with a lot of those receivers. As like, oh, that guy's a big name and he had a good profile, but he is no different than, it's like the Wandale corollary, right? You got Wandale Robinson, who people killed off a couple years ago. And there's 15 sexy dynasty receivers that literally over the last 2.5 years are no better, if not worse, than Wandale Robinson. Yet why were they never in the same tier? Like that's one of those blind spots. It's too late to buy Wandale now because it's probably you're paying at what his peak is. But how do you find those next ones? How do you exploit to be able to use this kind of edge on your teams? Because I'll tell you what, capturing one of those big games from a guy like, I don't know. It's
yesterday.
Like
let's go.
Jalen
yesterday.
Coker's big game yesterday. Somehow capturing that, even like in a start 12 or a start 11 league. Like that's massive. That's 100x on what you paid to get that in your lineup. You know what happened if you didn't get it in your lineup? You pray that after their bye that he somehow has another good game, and you happen to need to start him that week. And you probably wouldn't, because guess what? That's your fantasy quarterfinals. And I probably don't want to make the bet that Jalen Coker repeats it again. You know what I mean? Like that's just a lesson on wide receiver variance. It is wild.
Well, and that's like, I'll kick this to you because I know we talked about it, so you probably know the answers. Like there was only one wide receiver over 100 yards going into last night's game, and even last night's game didn't have one. A.D. Mitchell. How many people started that A.D. Mitchell yesterday? Probably sub 5%.
Right.
But you know what's going to happen next week? Everybody's going to start that A.D. Mitchell. He's going to get jammed into the lineup because he's the guy. They need a guy. They needed somebody. Tyrod needs somebody to throw to. And then what's he going to do? He's probably going to drop 2 passes. He's going to be like 4 for 50. People are going to be so salty because he had, 8 fantasy points, or it's going to be the guy who was number 2 in yards yesterday, Devon Vele, who you've talked about quite a bit, right? Like now what? Now what do you do with those guys, right? Because that's the takeaway, right? Like for me, like that's the next takeaway that comes out of all of the variance. It's like, okay, you realize your team has just got a bunch of these dudes. Now what do you do with them? Like you can't sell them because maybe your trade deadline's passed, or you're struggling for a playoff spot, but so you need the points. You think you need these guys, but it's hard because you just gave the data. The odds that A.D. Mitchell goes and hits 15 fantasy points again, PPR points, is sub 25% the rest of the season. And that's just like, would you take that risk? Sure. But do you want to take that risk? Like you probably can't. But for some teams like that have Amon-Ra as their wide receiver 1, now they have one of these guys and they're like, oh, well, I got replacement value. I'm good to go. And then variance slaps you right in the face next week when Devon Vele goes for 2 for 34. Like that's when it hurts.
Well, and that's why you have to use the Trinity. I mean, every week we talk about which guys do you want to chase based on the Trinity, because sometimes fantasy points are fluky, right? Fantasy points are not based on how the player was used. It could have been a broken play. It could have been, one big air yard catch that was made. Like sometimes it can be fluky. That's why you do have to look at the Trinity every week. I do think there are better bets than others, but that is more the repeating production argument, right? We don't look at the Trinity to go, who's going to go up in value? Who is the the big dynasty profile stand in my league that's going to buy AD Mitchell because of what he was last year. And now I like him again because he had a big game. Like that's where when your player has one of these games, you have to really assess like what is their true trajectory. It can't just be, oh, well, he was a good profile last year. Now he's breaking out. Like you get burned on that way more than you get rewarded if you go and buy. But it is interesting just looking at this. I just wanted to talk about this tonight because I think going into 2026, at least for me, one of the things that I've had some success with this year, and I'm probably going to lean into it even more next year, is kind of roster constructing around the ability to use the Trinity tool, to use this variance to your advantage. Now, the key is, and the hard part about it is you have to capture the production, right? Just because you have a roster full of guys like AD Mitchell or Pat Bryant, guys like that, right? They have a name, they have a profile, people like them at some point. If you don't capture their production, it's useless. The only mechanism you have to benefit is can you trade them to somebody that now will give you more today than they would have yesterday? If the answer is no, then great. That 18.9 that AD Mitchell had yesterday or whatever it was, it's meaningless to you. It's a zero to you. If anything, it's an opportunity cost every second he's on your roster, and you can't trade him for any more than what he cost you yesterday to just have on your team. So it's really being able to take advantage of that. I think with the Trinity, it is a way to construct the team. Now, your team's going to look really dreadful on paper, Brandon. But I'm looking at some of these names, and I think if you can also find the ones that you don't believe in, and you put the stop loss in, like Ray talks about the stop loss, right? Like when I know I'm probably getting out on a player before they settle into this range. You know who's had one game over 15 points this year? Xavier Worthy. There's been 4 other Chiefs that have done it. Tyquan Thornton has as many 15-point games as Xavier Worthy. Marquise Brown has more. So that's one of those where, I mean, and I've been a proponent of, hey, the Chiefs are a great situation. If Xavier Worthy is their wide receiver 2, he's probably a wide receiver 2 going forward, right? But this year doesn't make you super confident that he's actually going to be that. So if you can still get out on him for, I don't know, another receiver in a second or something like that, like maybe that's the stop loss point where you are making the smart trade. You know, like that's the kind of analysis you have to go through and look at these receivers and really figure out. Because I think the days are done of where you just go, oh, that receiver had 2 big games, I'm going to get a first for him. People are too smart. I think a lot of dynasty players now understand that unless you are in the JSN, the Puka, the Chase, that range, like, yes, every once in a while you can get a first for a receiver, but you're not going to the market and going, hey, guys, Michael Pittman's smashing now. He has 15.2 points per game this year. Who wants to give me their 27 first? Crickets. You know what I mean? And he's good. He's one of the guys that shows up on the list like 7 times. He's a good receiver with a good profile, with a good Trinity. He's probably going to be a solid player for the next couple years. But as soon as I say, Brandon, you need to give me a 27 first, I don't know if that's what I want to spend it on, you know? And that's fine. But there's a lot of dynasty receivers that live into that range. And there's ones that we value that are going to be above that range that are probably just going to live in that range. And we don't see it until it's too late.
Well, there you have it. Listen, we have Dynasty Takeaway this week, which is really, but there's a lot to unpack inside of that broad statement of variance, right? There's different levels to it. And I think for Scott and I, like this was something that when we talked about, and I hinted at it, you know, during the trade show, but I think this is one of those things where like, just sometimes you have to really look at the data and really look at the variance and say, all right, this isn't a sustainable way of building and constructing teams. And you have to be able to, you know, the dynasty quote unquote edge is really just understanding what your league is, what the context is, what the variance can be, and how do you make the best moves out of it. So got a few questions that I want to get to before we head out of here, because, you know, there is a Monday Night Football game with a lot of people, you know, with a lot of fantasy hopium at the end here. We got Jackson Dart, we got Wandale, we've got Travion Henderson, we've got Drake May, we've got Kayshon Boutte, we've got Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry, Theo Johnson. Like there's a lot of fantasy value in tonight. So I want to make sure that we get to some of the questions. Is Justin Jefferson a sell or a hold, Scott? Love to add something to him for JSN if I could.
I mean, he's a hold or a don't sell if you're hoping to turn him into a premium asset because the credit you're getting in the trade for JSN, it's like not what you want it to be, probably. So I think instead of trying to trade him at this point, it's you just park him and you try to replace him for as cheap as possible. Because I mean, he's the problem with JSN is if you do like the true like captured war analysis on JSN, he's been or on Justin Jefferson, he's been killing you, Brandon.
Oh,
I mean, you've gotten over the last 4 games, you've gotten what, like 8 points per game, 9 points per game, or something like that. So like he's actively hurting you. He's not just hurting you as his value falls, but he's hurting you because you're psychologically just jamming him in every week and going, oh, he'll get 7 for 80 this week. And it's like, he doesn't even do that. So yeah, I think he's a tough one to move right now. But if you are, maybe do you have the stop loss analysis on J Jets? Like, is he ever going to get back to what he was 3 years ago? Like, he hasn't even been elite for almost 2 years now. 2023, he was really good, but like, does he ever get back there? Or do you just kind of hope he gets back to he's where Nico Collins is? Like, do you hope he just gets back to that level? I don't know. Because if you think that's the analysis, then if you can get 60 cents in a trade for JSN, I don't hate it.
Can I trade Justin Jefferson in a playoff second and get Rashee Rice? Is that possible?
That's a good idea. Because I think there's still just a little stink on Rashee Rice because people just don't trust him. But it has nothing to do with his production or his usage. You know what I mean? If you put the name CeeDee Lamb in place of him, people would be like, he's the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, and it's not close. So, like, I do think there's a little bias against Rashee Rice because of the unpredictability of the offseason, and he's still on a rookie deal. But I mean, that could get squashed quickly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If he gets the DK deal in March, he's a top 5 receiver in Dynasty, and no one really argue with it.
Yeah. Like, I'm trying to like just think like, would I want to trade my Justin Jefferson for George Pickens right now? Yeah, I don't even know if you can. I mean, you could try, but I don't know if you can.
That was the name that popped up. The name that popped up of guys that are attainable that I think still people have not caught up to the name George Pickens being equivalent to the name Justin Jefferson. So you might be able to even get a plus there. Depends, but that's one that's worth trying. Anybody else, if you're trying for Puka, CD, Chase, JSN, if Amon-Ra wasn't injured, I would include him into this list. But if you're trying for like those 5, like there's not motivation from the teams to make that type of pivot. You know what I mean? There's just not going to probably happen.
I mean, if you can get this is a smash.
Yeah.
Because you're getting full credit for JJ. Because Monangai has been much better of late now that the Bears have just resorted to.
He's startable.
We're just gonna run the ball, and we really
startable.
don't care.
Both those running backs are in ranges. They're only valuable when they're playable, and he's startable, and Caleb Johnson's not. So, yeah, I mean that's a little bit of a win in the trade. And I'm guessing the person that got JJ and Caleb thought they smashed. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, they're retooling. We'll come back stronger in 2026, Scott. I'll be firing. Yeah, I think this is probably one of the better pivots. If you could do something like that, that would be great. Let's do this one. Pick up Adonai Mitchell. I'm assuming that's Elijah Higgins or Velo, because it can't be T Higgins. T Higgins can't be.
It's probably Jaden Higgins
or Jaden Higgins. Could be Jaden. Could be Elijah. Who knows?
It's definitely Jaden Higgins over.
I would,
but both of those pretty clearly over Vele. I mean, Vele is 28 years old.
Yeah.
He got traded already by a team that doesn't have a clear receiver room. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that the Broncos are absolutely right at evaluating receivers, but you've seen the Broncos, what pass catching weapons this year, right? And they basically are like, yeah, we don't need this guy.
I mean, it's pretty much Pat Bryant, Troy Franklin, and then you sprinkle in a little bit of Cortland Sutton when Bo needs something, or maybe Marvin Mims. Like, it kind of feels like it's that way. I don't know if the Trinity. I haven't seen the Trinity yet.
Point is, he's not. He's not on the range with the other two. I think the other two, you're not just getting potential. Like, I could start them, and they maybe don't kill me. But I do think both of those other two enter the offseason with a little buzz. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's the benefit there. It's more than just you could play them down the stretches. They probably have some buzz going into next year too.
Appreciate the super chat from Spock4982. Dimes and Hampton and Hunter and a second for Allen and Waddle. I'll give you the team. Well, I'll put the team up on the screen. So he's got Lamar, Jacoby Brissett, Daniel Jones, Kyler, Shuck. He's got Bijan, CMC, Hampton. I'm assuming that's Chase Brown, Woody. He's got Puka, Amon-Ra, Rashi, Travis Hunter. This is a flex of a team. DJ Moore, Gadsden, Fannin, Andrews, Ingram. No 26 first, all 27 and 28 picks. He's the number 1 seed. The deadline is next week. I do remember this because this was in the All Gas Trade Show chat as well. So I've already given my opinion over there. If you want it, you can go over there.
So I think on this roster, I would be fine with Hunter over Waddle, but I could also say if you could get Waddle for Hunter, you could do that too. Like I'm fine with either one of those. I don't think that's the driver of this deal. So I think it comes down to, I mean, you're getting Hampton and you're getting Allen for Hampton and dimes. I think anytime you can get Josh Allen for a deal that includes Daniel Jones, I'm probably considering it pretty heavily, especially with your running back room. You're already the number 1 seed. You don't have your 26, but you still have your future picks. The only thing I don't like about this trade, Brandon, is we talked about this today.
Yep.
You're adding Josh Allen to a QB room. I mean, you know what? You're kind of just benching Jacoby Brissett on this team. And I have a couple teams like this. This was the first weekend I had 2 teams where I started Jacoby Brissett over Lamar Jackson. And for the past 3 weeks before that, I just kept jamming in Lamar. So I finally look at Jacoby Brissett's war, and I'm like, dude, I'm missing out on like a top 8 quarterback every week for the name Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson's like quarterback 22. Like, it's just killing me. You know what I mean? I've left 50 points on the board. So I finally bit the bullet and did it this week, and it worked out great. But that's an interesting one. Like, you have a quarterback room with Lamar and Brissett, and you want to upgrade to Josh Allen. Like, you're upgrading to Josh Allen so you can put Lamar Jackson on the bench. You know what I mean?
Well,
and
then
Jacoby Brissett.
Well, and then you look at this team, and this Spock again. I gave you the opinion over there. I think you should take the Josh Allen, but the more like you look at all this too, it's like you're not only just benching. Like, you could start Brissett. I mean, if he took out Lamar and he just had Brissett, Daniel Jones, and Shuck, like that's a pretty good. Like, that's not a terrible, like that's a, like for a number 1 seed, that's a usable quarterback room.
And I didn't catch, here's what I didn't catch. So I like the 1.75 tight end premium. I didn't catch that he has like trade chips sitting there with guys like Gadsden, Fannin, Kyler. Like, he has excess trade chips that are not necessarily picks. Maybe you're splurging a little bit on this deal, but this is the team to do it with, right? Like, I can have 3 things go wrong and I can still go, hey, who wants Gadsden for a first? Fannin for a first, and there's a chance I get it in this format. So you have plenty of resources that if you really want to do this deal, and this is the deal you think gives you the best insurance coverage to go down. Because here's the thing, if Lamar bounces back, you have a great problem to have because you have 3 top 15 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? So I feel good about this deal now that I see the rest of his team. I mean, he's got plenty of depth he can pull from to liquidate if he needs to. Oh, maybe Brandon left. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I saw Brandon freeze. So if Brandon's gone, that's it for the show this week. Didn't have any other comments. I'm sure there were some questions that we didn't get to, but Trinity show tomorrow. If nobody is seeing this before then, it'll already be out there for the members. If you are not a member of the Trades and Chill tier on YouTube, check that out. Link is in the description. You get the live Trinity show with Ray and I. It's usually Tuesday afternoons-ish. It just depends on when we can get together and do it. But we literally just talk about the ways to kind of hack that wide receiver variance that we talked about for 30 minutes in this show. We literally just talked about that, like how to navigate through the usage from the previous week, etc. So check that out. It's every Tuesday, and then Dynasty Deal Show every Friday night. Jump in the community, patreon.com/allgas and ddfantasyfootball.com. Good luck, everybody. Week 13, Monday Night Football. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.